Hey everyone, welcome to the Kontent Rocks podcast, the podcast about all things content by Kentico, .NET, and Azure, and even a little Jamstack. For those people who want to learn more about headless technology. Welcome to the show today. This is your host, Brian McKeiver. I am Kentico Content MVP and Azure MVP. Many things there in that title. But I'm very pleased today to be joined by Rosta Striz. Rosta is the technology management partner and product management owner of integrations at Kontent. Rosta, how are you doing today?
Yeah, hi Brian. I'm well. Thanks for inviting me and excited to be here.
Well, thank you for giving me a little bit of your time. I know it's a little bit later in your day, so I'm glad we could at least fit it in the schedule because I know we're all busy people. But for those of you listening and watching, our topic today is something that gets me very excited. I'll be honest. We're going to talk about integrations and the integration options that you have with Kontent by Kentico, because there are multiple, and it's actually a pretty frequent question that I receive from my blog and from social media about, how do we do this? How do we actually integrate and manipulate our data and content inside of Kontent? And that's why I couldn't think of a better guest to join me than someone who's literally basically in charge of making sure all those integrations work well and their quality and that they're ready for the customers of Kontent to use. So again, Ross, I appreciate your time and I'm looking forward to this discussion because I know we've got 3 or 4 different options for how we integrate with Kontent. And it's a broad way to say it, right? Integrations. But, actually, Ross, I think maybe before we kick into those options, I'm going to call a little bit of an audible here and ask, maybe tell everyone what is your day-to-day like at Kontent? What do you work on frequently, or what keeps you up at night working with the product? It's always nice to hear from someone who's actually on the team.
Yeah, sure. So like you said, my job has 2 basic parts. I'm officially a technology partner manager, which means that I need to find and reach out to and build relationship with different third-party vendors, our technology partners, and we are trying to build a network of similar-minded products. And those products would typically cover all these typical integration scenarios that you would want to implement with content. So whenever a customer comes to us or a partner and asks about, hey, how can we do this, right? Or we want to implement this, we can have also have them supported from the other side, and maybe recommend a specific vendor that we like working on and already have a integration in part. It's always easier to make customers and the projects successful if everybody is working to the same goal from different angles, right? So this is the first part of my job. And the second part is also like you mentioned, I'm a product manager for integrations. So I gather and work with feedback from different customers about what integration they would like to use, how their experience with different integration points in content, and also work on product opportunities that are tied to this integration. So whenever there's a specific requirement to change something in the API or extend the API and offer a new functionality that would make it easier for customers to integrate, that's when I come in and I have to think about the solution and then hopefully transform it to actual product part and have a lead a development team that will then implement this. So that's a lot of different things, and I'm busy a lot of the time, and but yeah.
Yeah, well, great. I appreciate the background. So that kind of sets up the rest of this conversation really well. And actually, it also tells anyone who's listening that if they have an integration that they want done, maybe you're the guy to actually talk to about it. But we'll leave that for a future discussion. So with that background, with the fact that you're in charge of the integrations, and I'm someone who actually uses the integrations quite a bit or has to make that work with our client projects, let's talk about the options. And ultimately, the question that we want to answer today is, if someone's new with content, or even maybe just headless CMS in general, and they're not sure what they can do from an integration standpoint, let's talk about the avenues that they have available to them. In what integration points or mechanisms do they have? And and maybe where they can even get started with even answering that question. And as we were kind of preparing a little bit earlier for the show today, we talked about maybe there's a good place to start on the Content.ai website, which is actually the integrations location. So I'm going to bring that up here and just show the intro to this page, and then we'll use this as kind of a basis to talk about the answer to that first big question, which is, how do we integrate with content? And one of the great places to start is definitely right here on the integrations page that we're showing. It's got a nice little introduction title about how to combine and manipulate data with content. And it kind of right away goes off into, here are some examples of integrations that content considers part of I think the core integration set. Is that a good way to think of it, Rosta? The integrations we have here on this page are the core, or like the most supported integrations that content currently has?
Yeah, exactly. So we call these core integrations. Most of them are actually being built together with our partners. Yeah, so whenever you see like the small gray logo, that means that this vendor is also our technology partner. And yeah, there are also different resources on each of these pages. Linked resources at the bottom. It usually comes with pre-built connector that you can reuse. There's often a small video, sometimes even your video, and all these use cases that this integration actually like tackles, and how to install it, all that stuff is there.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're just looking at the actual Ultra Commerce integration, or formerly known as Slatwell Commerce, and it kind of shows an example of what that integration does. In fact, this one actually has a whole starter template React site that you can kind of get started with an integration between content and Ultra Commerce to do a full digital commerce website that brings both of these things together. And at the bottom of these pages, there's these resources for maybe where to go to actually use these integrations. So this is a great kind of introduction into the capabilities and examples that you can do with integrations with content. And it's nice to see like that we have some very popular products here. Like Zapier is a great integration platform to do various things with content. We've got Uniform for personalization. We've got Commerce. We've got Static for static site generator. It's just good like ways to think about the possibilities of providing a API first, modern tech solution for your clients and your projects. But if we had to go a little deeper into how do these things work, maybe we should go there next, Rosta, with, now that we've seen some possibilities with this page, what are our, choices and options for maybe actually honing in on how some of these things work? So like a level deeper. And I think to do that, let's throw up this next illustration, which I think is a good way to visually think of the categories of integrations that the product has. And maybe we can go through these one at a time. So let's talk about the top of the graphic first, Ross. So when we see content in the middle, and then we follow the line towards the top of it with the delivery API to like your customer's site or app, that's like the first basic integration, right? This is, if you need to power data in your application, you need an API, and this is the main one. And that's basically what this is showing here, right, Rosta, at the top?
Yeah, that's that's actually the like the default scenario for using a headless CMS. You have your data structure, you have your content, and you just wanna through an API render it on your website or in your application. So this is what you would use the delivery API for. It's optimized. It's on the CDN, so it's very fast. It's cached and it's optimized for rendering the website actually.
Yeah, I think any headless CMS better have this first one, right? This is like the key of actually providing API first service from a content management system. And this, you probably could have guessed without watching this episode at all, that there's definitely an API to get the content into your app. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that because that's just very basic. What I think is more interesting and what is more unclear if you've decided to move on with content as your CMS is the next one on the left-hand side of the graphic, which we term the management API. And this API allows us to do more than just retrieve information, which is the point of the delivery API. So Rosta, can you maybe introduce the management API and tell people that this is like the second choice for how they integrate with content, and maybe talk a little bit about what it can actually do?
Yeah, sure. So the management API is an API that lets you, manipulate all the data that you have in content. So it's mainly for updating or writing content or content models. So you can like alter all the structure of your content through there. You can automate stuff like imports. You can keep a different like migration versions of your content types. There's a lot of things you can do. You can set different settings of your projects. We also released recently support for managing users through the management API. So basically, almost whatever you can do through the UI of the application, all that management stuff, you can now do through management APIs as well. And it goes further than that. For some scenarios, integration scenarios where, for example, translations, which is like a very typical scenario, you can use the management API to get the content you want to translate, and then you have to use the same API to upsert the new version in the new language. So for these types of scenarios, when you are taking content out of content and adding some other information, transforming it some other way, then you can just through the management API push it back and create a new version and things like that. So this is where the management API comes into play. Obviously, it's a little bit different than the delivery API. It's not really optimized, for reading. So you can't really read a lot of data. It doesn't have, listing endpoint, anything like that. But it's just specifically for manipulating types and settings and content items.
Yep, and I think what you kind of answered first here is really critical for people, and it's a question that I get all the time: is how do I maybe take data from my own internal business application or my own API or my own even spreadsheet or database table, and how do I turn that into structured content inside of content as maybe content items and variants of content? And this is really the answer. The management API is what you can use to ingest all that content and maybe even map it and translate it into the way you need to have it in a very clean structure that your content model is set up in, and maybe even like update taxonomies and things like that. This is one of my, I think, favorite aspects of content. I really enjoy working with the management API because of all the things that you can do with it. And in fact, even we're using it in our projects currently from a migration scenario where we're actually building the content model in code migrations. So that way, if we have multiple environments or multiple projects, we can replicate the content types in a very structured way, in a very controlled way across those environments, and do updates and differences and actually kind of compare the environments and kind of put more of an enterprise approach around content modeling that is still, can work within the UI of content, but allow it to be replicated in an automated and repeatable way that helps when you have big projects with multiple environments and maybe even hundreds of websites that you want to accomplish with your CMS. So that part of it, you guys have done a fantastic job on, and I really appreciate the examples that the team has given out on GitHub. And I think I'm going to do an entire episode just on migrations coming up next in Kontent Rocks. So I don't want to get too much into it, but Migration API is fantastic, and it's one of my favorite things. So highly encourage people to check it out. After the Migration API, if we look maybe towards the middle of the diagram, this is something that is still somewhat common, but I think misunderstood aspect of the system so far, and that's webhooks. The webhooks are like the third choice for how you might want to integrate with content. And Rosta, can you maybe kick us off with what can we do with webhooks and why would we use them?
Yeah, sure. So webhooks, it's basically a notification mechanism. So you can, create and customize like your notification. So the notification gets sent whenever something happens in content. So it usually can be, some content has changed and I need to update something on, in a different product or different tool, or I need to purge my cache and get the data again, or I need to update my search database, something like that. So and it's highly customizable. So there are like hundreds of different scenarios that you could use webhooks for, and you could very specifically say, hey, I'm interested in this part. So whenever this happens with my content, I can like hook a specific event at the end of that, so I can get a message in Teams, something like that. I can trigger basically a whole process of things just autonomously once something happens. So
yeah. And in fact, if you're curious about what webhooks can do, the documentation is probably the first place to start at content.ai/learn. It's a fantastic way to do it. In fact, our last episode of Kontent Rocks, where I was joined with Andre Polesny, we actually did a deep dive into webhooks connected to workflows. So as content changes state or step of a workflow, webhooks are the things that allow you to react to that and do special things. And we actually connected a serverless function to it. So it's both a technical thing and a marketing thing for keeping aware of what's going on with your content, when things are published, when they're archived, all that's totally capable. So again, we probably won't spend too much more time on webhooks because the last choice on this graphic on the right-hand side talks about custom elements. And this is probably one of the most visual integrations in content because of the way it works in the audience that it serves. And it's really all about making it so that your marketing team members or content admins have great editing experiences inside of content when they're working with the user interface, and maybe they need to do something special or something custom. So let's talk a little bit, Rosta, about custom elements. What can they do, and how do they offer integration points into the content app?
Yeah, so custom elements are a little bit different than the rest of the integration endpoints that we mentioned. They're actually, like you said, basically the only UI extension that we offer at the moment. It's basically a field level extension. And what it does, it lets you basically build a custom application, custom web application that you could render inside of content directly in the content editing UI. So you just have another element, and then you can see your custom application. It gets some context from the surrounding area, surrounding data, so it knows hey, you are now editing this specific piece of content, and it can change parts of it. It's usually used for things like you can see Binder here on the screen right now. So you can see you can use that for asset management, for example, when you have your asset management pop up from the custom element, and it lets you select images or videos from your asset management third-party system and link it to content. It's used for e-commerce when you can do all, the same thing with product inventory. You can link different products into your content. There's a lot of things that you can do. You can select forms, all these like selectors or visual things for uniform, for personalization. You can select different audiences. This content is for different audiences, right? And sky's the limit for what you can do inside of the custom element.
Yeah. And so this is the part that may not be 100% obvious to developers who are working in their first project with content. So I think it's worth bringing up the fact that, so what I did is I on the screen, I'm sharing a quick web page that just shows off some of the projects that have been done over the years with content and custom elements. Most of these projects, and this is the gallery of custom element samples that we currently have today, they all kind of are at GitHub repo. Basically, it is a very specific set of JavaScript that you can create these custom elements with that are injected kind of into the system. So when you're on a content item and you're editing something, it allows you to like do something special. Like Rosta said, is like select a form or select a product from an e-commerce engine or select an audience if we're talking uniform. It's kind of a neat way to basically extend the user interface so that you don't have to like go into like 2 systems or 3 systems and like write configuration here and write something there and jump all over the place. It really kind of brings a unified editing experience into the content UI that saves your editor time. And I really like this. In fact, when this first came out, it was something that as an MVP, we actually got to play with our very first content custom element. And one of the things that I did with Andrew Thompson, the other content MVP, because we were together in Brno, was create a sentiment analyzer of pass in the paragraph of text to IBM Watson's analysis engine and return whether it was positive, negative, or neutral, just as a way to like see what we could do. And I really enjoyed how easy it was to put together the custom elements and actually just have it show up. It's kind of running on my local machine as a developer. I can step through it and I can see how it's reacting, but then actually see it behave in content the way that we're seeing some of these screenshots animate here. So this is a great place for that. And it's not the only place though. So we can't talk about this too much, but today this is a good place to look at these custom elements and some examples and gain inspiration from them. But maybe let's talk about the future in our last couple minutes here, Rosta, of where some of this is going. And I know this is, maybe we can't say everything about it, but could you give our listeners maybe a little preview as to where integration points and where some of these integrations might look like or move towards in the rest of this year, maybe even further out in the future? Can you give a little bit of a glimmer of what you guys are thinking behind the scenes?
Yeah, sure. So right now, all of these custom elements and all of these integration points, you basically can build whatever you want by yourself. We offer support examples, stuff like that, but you still need to run it on your infrastructure. You need to build it in your platform of choice. Going forward, we really would like to enhance this experience and maybe offer some of these integrations in a more out-of-the-box, supported form, which would make it easier to configure and run it, directly from your content app. We have some experiences with huge projects that contain a lot of different integrations, and after some time these integrations might be outdated, and it's really hard, I'm sure you understand, to get back to the old code and update through the new API, insert a new SDK, especially like if there are some changes in the development teams, right? So we want to alleviate these problems and make it more approachable and maybe easier even to switch from one system to another, just by providing some out-of-the-box form of some of these selected integrations in the near future, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, I'm very excited for that feature. I think everyone would always appreciate having an out-of-the-box integration that kind of just works is what everyone asks for, right? Does it just work, or how much effort do I have to put into it? So I'm looking forward to that. And honestly, I'm actually looking at the time a little bit. We're a little bit over, so I think we're gonna have to call it here. I think that you and I could probably both talk about this topic for another hour or two, but no one's gonna listen that long anyways. So we'll call it. Again, what we've done is we've reviewed our integration options with content. We went through 3 or 4 different options, right? Using the delivery API to retrieve data for your app, using the management API to push data in or work with data or work with your structure and do almost anything inside the platform from a management standpoint. We talked about webhooks for notifications of content changes and other actions and activities that happen. And then, of course, we've talked lastly about custom elements and how you can, really improve the editing experience of your admins and marketers. So, Rosta, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time today. I know you're a very busy person. One question I have for you is, if anyone wants to maybe get help on integrations or learn more, where should we direct them to? What's the best place to maybe reach the team or even yourself?
So there's a integration section in our documentation. So whenever you are looking for something passively, that's the place to go. And also we have our community Discord, and there's a lot of members of our team. There's also all the content MVPs that have rich experience with all the integrations. So just send us a message there, and hopefully we will get the answer and we resolve your issues.
Thank you. Yeah. And so I put a link on the screen too in case you're listening. It's content.ai/Discord. The Discord community really is a great place to be, to understand how to do some of these things. And you will get help from us, I promise you, if you join. So, all right. Well, with that, this has been the latest episode of the Kontent Rocks podcast, all about integrations. And I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Rosta, for joining.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you later.